morning, everyone. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen, the editor of Streaming Media Magazine and StreamingMedia.com, and welcome to the 2016 Streaming Media West and Live Streaming Summit. Hope you're all ready for a great day, great 2 days. We're looking forward to it, and kicking off this morning with a great keynote speaker. If you have any questions about the program or room locations, they should all be answered in your program guide, but if not, just look for me or Jose Castillo, who's helping making sure everything runs on time here, or anyone else who's got a purple staff badge, and they can get your questions answered for you. So before we kick off this morning, though, I'd like to thank our gold sponsors, BitMovin, Cisco, the Digital Watermarking Alliance, Epiphan Video, IBM, Limelight Networks, Mirror Image, Quantum, Teradek, TouchStream, and vMix. Our silver sponsor, Tata Communications, and our corporate sponsors, LiveU, Ustream, Verizon Digital Media Services, VMC, and Wowza Media Systems. Also like to thank our streaming partner, Mobion, who are filming all the sessions and are streaming select sessions live on the StreamingMedia.com homepage. So if any of your colleagues couldn't be here and want to check out some of the sessions, you can direct them to our homepage where the live stream will be running throughout the show. The exhibit hall will open immediately after the keynote here, or after the coffee break, and will be open all day. And it will also be open from 5 to 6 p.m. tonight for our exhibit hall networking reception. And that will be followed by the Streaming Media Beer Garden and networking event that's outside in the courtyard, and that runs from 6 until 7:30 p.m. The lunch today is sponsored by New Lion. That will also be taking place in the courtyard. And our live streaming summit sponsors, where the live streaming summit will be running parallel to Streaming Media West, are Aspera, TouchStream, and Ustream. And with that, I'd like you to join me in welcoming our keynote. His name is Steve Shannon. He's the General Manager of Content and Services at Roku. He heads Roku's Content and Services Group, which is responsible for establishing new content relationships, acquiring entertainment, on-platform advertising, and growing services on the Roku platform. Steve has led many successful companies that have shaped the digital living room. Prior to Roku, he held senior executive roles at digital media companies RealD and Gemstar TV Guide. He also has deep experience growing digital media startups from the ground up. He co-founded iBand and sold it to Macromedia after developing what is now Adobe's Dreamweaver product line. He also co-founded Akimbo Systems, I remember them, the first internet video on-demand service for television. Prior to Akimbo, he launched Replay TV, the first digital video recorder, and drove product, marketing, and sales strategies. Steve holds a bachelor's degree from University of California, Los Angeles, and an MBA from UC Berkeley, so please welcome Steve Shannon.
Thank you. Robust welcome after, I don't know, long night. You guys, how many trick-or-treaters last night? Not very many. Revelers? Any revelers from last night? Thanks for dragging yourself out of bed, making it here. Maybe a little nap on the beach afterwards. Okay, let's see, we got this working. Good. All right, well, thanks again for having me. It's always a pleasure. I did this once 4 years ago, and it was fun. I'm glad to be back. My name's Steve Shannon. I head the content team at Roku, so that means I'm responsible for all the relationships with all the content partners that we have. We have 4,000 partners, approaching anyway, somewhere between 3,500, 4,000 partners on the platform, growing all the time. We launch, a lot of new apps every day, and it's a pleasure to work with them all. And a lot of people don't realize about Roku that most of our gross profit, the revenue, comes after we deploy a Roku into a home. It's not a consumer electronics business model. It's really a services, content, media-oriented business model where we have a lot of paths towards monetization, basically by partnering with publishers to help them grow their business. And that's really what I do. That's what I focus on. We're about 500 people. We're based in Los Gatos, Silicon Valley town. We're actually right next door to Netflix. But I had the LA office here as well as the New York offices, about 80 people in my group focusing on onboarding partners, managing partners, helping them grow their audience, ad sales, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm coming from. And so today we'll talk about Just some kind of my views of where streaming is going with particular focus on the TV as opposed to mobile or desktop. I'll do a little deep dive on some Roku, on Roku specifics, so you can all have a chance to get familiar with our company itself, and then I'll go even deeper into the business models underneath, so you can see how the monetization works, and both from our standpoint and from the publisher standpoint. So how many of you are from technology companies, like software companies? Show of hands. That's what I thought, a lot of tech folks here. And how about from media companies? Good media presence. Okay, good, that helps. So I can use software lingo. You guys can handle it. So we start with the mantra that all TV will be streamed. That's what we believe, that all TV eventually will be streamed. All TV will be consumed over the internet as opposed to broadcast or traditional cable style distribution like QAM or whatever. It's, some may view it as hyperbole. We don't view it as hyperbole. We view it as the way the world will be, and we think that to believe otherwise is basically betting against the internet. And many companies have not fared well betting against the internet. So we encourage this mantra, not just for us, but for everybody in the business, because it has profound implications for the way the industry is going. So much so that we can't even really fathom all of the changes that are going to come our way as this transition takes place. But I'll throw some thoughts out there. So what does that mean? If it's all going over the internet, what does it mean? And just a few thoughts. So linear television will decline. It's a little bit of an older chart, but linear has been in decline for a while now, basically because of on-demand, but linear will continue to decline. I'm not saying that live TV will go away. Obviously, sports and news and things like that, people are going to continue to want to enjoy. You can do live TV on the internet just as well as any other medium. So, but in general, linear viewing will decline. And vast majority of viewing today is still linear. So you're talking about a huge shift in people going from appointment viewing to primarily on-demand viewing, and those implications are pretty dramatic. Another observation is that the single service set-top box will go away. How many of you have one of these in your house, the single service, old school streaming set-top box? Wow, not very many, pretty progressive crowd. Interesting. Well, of course, the vast majority of people still have these things, if you can imagine, these dinosaurs. They are, the UI hasn't changed much in years, and people are generally, people know how to use them because they've had them for so long, but they are difficult to use. We actually index above census with people over 65 with Roku. Part of that is price sensitivity, but part of that is ease of use. So Roku is actually easier to use than one of these old school set-top boxes. But in general, pay TV operators are going to need to compete with the likes of Roku or Apple or Google or Amazon in their user experiences to continue to sell pay TV services. They can't continue to offer pay TV services. You can tell by the survey in this room of you people who are, advanced indicator, I think, of where all that's going. People just aren't going to keep putting up with these set-top boxes. So it needs to be killer user interface. Also cost. I mean, these boxes can cost $250, $300 a pop. I mean, we just launched our Roku Express media player, $29.99 in the marketplace. We make positive gross margin on that. Retailers make positive gross margin on that. So you can imagine how low cost that product is to make. I can't tell you the cost now, but it's compared to the cost of one of these things, it's a fraction of the price, a fraction, almost getting down to like a single-digit percentage of the price of some high-end set-top boxes. So the economics can be quite transformative for the pay TV operator, as well as having a dramatically better experience. And then the third thing that has to happen with these set-top boxes is that they need to be a developer ecosystem. They need to be they need to be an app platform. And that is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. Very few companies can build an operating system that becomes an accepted and popular third-party development environment. So Microsoft did it first. Apple obviously has one. Google can do it. Amazon is beginning to do it a bit. Roku is one of them. But the notion of like a major cable operator, let's say, or a consumer electronics company building an operating system that is a third-party development environment that gets adopted by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of independent software developers, that notion is really going away. I mean, there are some examples, like Comcast is trying with X1, and they're big enough that they can kind of push it along. But even for them, it's tough. It's tough to get really broad adoption of an operating system that's more or less limited to a regional footprint. Or if you look at the consumer electronics companies, excuse me, like say Panasonic has their VieraCast platform, or the Sharp Aquosnet platform, or all of these various brand-specific environments. Very, very difficult for those to sustain. So what you'll start seeing is pay TV operators, ISPs, consumer electronics operators really needing to partner for their operating system, throwing out whatever proprietary stuff they do and having to partner. So, Roku is an option for partnership. Google, obviously, is an option for partnership. There aren't really a whole lot of options. Those are really the main two ones. But that's a huge trend that you'll see. And all of these third-party kind of parochial operating systems are going to die. Binge viewing will become the norm. And maybe it's getting trite to say, because everybody kind of knows that at this point, that binge viewing is a thing. But it's actually super difficult to achieve from a business model standpoint. What this means is that people will consume content kind of like they consume books. Like you might be reading one book. If you're an avid reader, maybe you're reading 2 or 3 books at a time, but probably not more than that. And when you pick up a book, you start with chapter 1, and you read it until you finish it, and then you move on to the next book. And that's the way TV watching is starting to be. Is you start with episode 1, and you march through it at your convenience in your spare time until you're done with the season, or with the series, excuse me. So that has a lot of implications. It means that the production of television shows starts to get more like the production of books, where historically you'd float a pilot and not even know what the end of the series is going to be like, and maybe it'll last 8 seasons, maybe it'll last 2 seasons, who knows? But you structure it in a way as a producer without really knowing the end. But now what we see is that these shows are being conceived of with a story arc where they know the entire story, and they might even decide up front, this is going to be 4 seasons worth or 5 seasons worth, then this is going to be over, the book's going to be over. And they might even produce it all at once. This hasn't really started to happen yet, but this is a trend. The way things are going to go is that the entire book will be made at once. How often do you see somebody publish half a book or a fourth of a book or the first 10 chapters of a book, see how it goes, and then keep writing the chapters? They don't do it that way. They make it all at once. So that's going to be a trend that's going to be happening in television. And in traditional TV, you have to do things like every episode is the exact same length. Every episode has a cliffhanger to get you to come back to the next week to watch the next show. Every episode even has little mini cliffhangers before the commercial break, so when the commercial break's over, you come back to and there's all these rules to make a good TV show. All that stuff goes away. Chapters are different lengths. Chapters may be action, they may be pastoral. Same thing with TV shows. Episodes can start being different lengths. They can start, they don't have to necessarily have cliffhangers or, a beginning, middle, and the end of each episode. They can make the assumption that the user is going to watch the next episode right after this episode as they write. And so it just really takes the shackles creatively off the medium. And so what you'll see is the TV will start to transcend film. It already is, in my opinion. It's transcending film as an art form. It's becoming better than film. Just like in literature, books are more popular and a superior art form, I would argue, than short stories. You can just argue that, hey, they're just different art forms, but everyone knows books are way more popular and significant in our society than short stories are. Well, films are the equivalent of short stories in video, and TV shows are like books. So, the implications on film are maybe not great, and we'll show some statistics. But what's happening is really viewing is shifting to TV off of film. So again, another major dramatic impact that comes from internet is just the overall shift away from film into television as people's preferred type of show to watch. So another observation, massive bundles will give away to a lot of different bundles. And we're not against the bundle at Roku. We love pay TV. We would like for the pay TV business to remain huge and even grow. We just want it to go through our platform. We just want people to enjoy TV on Roku, but we're happy to have people spending money and buying pay TV packages and things like that. The reality is, though, that it's going to get, the bundles and the packages are going to get more diverse. And not saying necessarily that people are going to spend less money on the massive on content overall, but they will be less inclined to spend on the big monolithic, massive, one-size-fits-all kind of bundle. And you'll see people picking up multiple subscriptions. You might have, maybe you're passionate about WWE, and so you might have a WWE subscription, and maybe you have a skinny bundle subscription with Sling, and you also have Netflix and Hulu or whatever. But that type of model where people are maintaining 3, 4, 5 subscriptions, we think is the way it will be in the future, for the foreseeable future anyway. Ad loads will go way down, and this is a good thing for the consumer. We have to put an end to the 5 commercial block. 2.5 minutes of 5 30-second commercials is no longer sustainable. It just won't work. And if you look at even sports where like the Olympics or NFL where ratings are declining, the ad loads are just too high. It's just so annoying. And when we get used to on-demand programming and things like Netflix where there are no commercials, coming back into a 5 commercial block is just untenable. And but we don't need to do that, because if you look at those 5 commercial blocks, most of those commercials aren't relevant to you. It's a waste, right? You might be looking at a dog food commercial, even though you don't have a dog, or you might be looking at a Cialis commercial, even though you're 18 years old, or you might be looking at diaper commercials, even though you don't have babies. All of this stuff is just waste. So the beauty of the internet, of course, is that we can get smarter about who we're advertising to, and just stop delivering the waste. So we'll be able to raise the CPMs, as we're already doing on Roku, charge higher CPMs than what we've traditionally charged in the TV business, keeping the ad revenues, hopefully where they are, while cutting the ad load in half, or maybe even by 2/3. So it'll be great for consumers. It'll be great for advertisers, because they're getting directly to the people who they want to get to with better advertising metrics and results. So it's a positive thing, but it's also a very disruptive thing for the industry that we're going through. I mean, this technology has been heavily refined on the internet. Tremendously sophisticated ad tech on the internet. Television is still just carpet bombing, right? It's still hardly any of this technology has been applied, with the exception of Roku. Really, the paradigm of digital advertising and all of the addressability and all of the interactivity and all of the reporting and analytics has not been applied to television yet. We are still in the Stone Age completely. But that's going to change. That's going to change wholesale across the board, and the impacts will be dramatic. Impact on the internet will be dramatic too. This is going to cause a lot of need for infrastructure investment, is the truth of the matter. 82% of internet traffic will be TV traffic, video traffic, by 2020. So video will dominate the internet. So OTT becoming the new normal. What's happening is streaming is becoming more similar to television as we've always known it, while at the same time, all of these trends are coming in, changing television dramatically. So you sort of like have all these forces of change over here, and then you have this huge, massive market of traditional TV over here, and then OTT kind of getting stretched in both directions. So it's kind of interesting to watch, like linear is an example where I just said that, hey, linear TV is going down, but in fact, linear TV is skyrocketing on OTT. So it's sort of a paradox, and there's a lot of that, like the tides meeting and all kinds of craziness going on in the marketplace. But what's happening right now is it's normalizing. It started out, we were the Netflix player. We only had one channel. We have, as I mentioned earlier, thousands of channels now. We only had one channel. It was the Netflix channel. I don't know if you how many of you heard the story, but our founder, Anthony Wood, he started Roku, and then he actually worked at Netflix for a little while, helping Reed Hastings build the first Netflix player that was going to be a Netflix product. And then he decided last minute he wanted to be independent and work with all the consumer electronics community. And so Roku absorbed that product out of Netflix. So the product that you know of as Roku today was originally spun out of Netflix, essentially. And to this day, we're next door to Netflix. But the product was purely an SVOD product, and then it became SVOD plus TVOD we had at Amazon. But it was really an ad-free product by and large, and really kind of dominated by those two services. This is not the case anymore. Amazon and Netflix are well below half of our viewing now, whereas it for a long time was all of our viewing. And so you have all kinds of new video coming in, and at first it was very niche-y. It was like Acorn, for example, a British television shows coming in. It's still popular, very cool service, or services like WWE, one of the first channels, very progressively, one of the first sort of linear services to aggressively adopt over the top, but still pretty kind of specialty, kind of niche-oriented. A lot of foreign language with Sling International, for example. A lot of specialty stuff. The last year or so has actually been becoming less niche as more mainstream partners come into the market. So again, back to the normalization, you have HBO go over the top, you have Showtime going over the top. We have things like the Sony PlayStation Vue service launching, which is really a pretty traditional bundle of content, very cool user interface, but a traditional bundle of content coming into the platform. So these mainstream players, when I looked at the top 10 list of platforms, even just from a year ago, to our top 10 list of platforms today, it's totally changed. I mean, probably 7 out of the 10 of them have changed, mainly because of these new, more mainstream guys coming into the mix and starting to take a lot of the viewership over. But it's exciting to see how progressive some of these old line companies are getting. Sports is really the one that needs to make the big step, I would say. Sports, if you look at the sports packages online, they are mostly things like out-of-market sports packages where, for example, if you're displaced a baseball fan, then you can go watch your home baseball games, that sort of thing. But it's often still blacked out from the local games. And that's something that really needs to change. I think all sports leagues have a tremendous opportunity to build more direct relationship with folks like yourselves and with consumers generally, which again is very disruptive to the traditional business model and not anything that a pay TV operator or a television network wants to hear about. And billions will be spent to try to delay the transition, but there's a tremendous opportunity in sports to go to really go direct with consumers. Again, on the normalization theme, we started out subscription, went to kind of transactional. But if you think about TV, the way it has always been is predominantly ad-supported. OTT has not been ad-supported. Television has been, so we're normalizing now. So the fastest growing segment of viewing on Roku is ad-supported viewing. Which is exciting to see because consumers like free stuff, and we can give them free content. The CW did a very, very progressive thing recently, launched on Roku, really the first broadcaster to launch a ad-supported service for free. CBS, also very progressive, launched CBS All Access on Roku, which is great, but it's a subscription model and it's ad-supported. Same with Hulu, it's a subscription model and it's ad-supported. CW is the first really major broadcaster to come out and put a business model out there that is purely free. So anyone can access it, and their model is completely banking on advertising, which is very progressive and I think a great idea and a real bellwether. Hopefully all the broadcasters will make their video available for free. I mean, heck, it's available on the air for free, right? Why shouldn't it be on the internet for free? It's amazing that we've gone this long. You can go to Fox or you can go to ABC or NBC or all of these guys and get it for free, but not on the internet yet, still. So hopefully that will change. And when that changes, again, to the story I was saying earlier about these mainstream guys coming in, when these broadcasters come in with free ad-supported content, ad-supported viewing is going to skyrocket on the internet. Huge amount of traffic will come onto the internet. It'll be enormously popular. It'll be transformative for the advertising industry because of all the capabilities that the internet deliver to the ad industry. So I'm excited about that. But there are, specialty guys like Red Bull TV doing real progressive things, which are purely ad-supported. TED Talks are starting to incorporate advertising now. Vivo is a great music video service, very popular, ad-supported. Obviously, YouTube is doing great on our platform. Huge amount of viewing on YouTube. Tons going on in the ad-supported space, literally thousands of ad-supported apps on Roku. So I mentioned this earlier, I think my second slide or something like that was about the decline of linear television. Linear and live events are growing gangbusters on Roku, growing like crazy. One of the fastest growing, it's typically ad-supported, but one of the fastest growing pieces are things like CBS News, for example. They have an app, and that is an ad-supported app, actually, that you don't have to pay for or even log into. It's, you just click into it. It drops you straight into a linear feed. You can hit the back button and go and look at shows on demand, but most people just drop right into the linear feed. Enormously popular. People are really using it for the election very, very heavily. When we look at statistics, traffic around the election is just tremendous. The Olympics was, I think, transformative. I think I hear statistics about ratings generally having gone down, and I attribute that to the ad loads that I was complaining about earlier. But, NBC did a great job with the Olympics on Roku. They had, every event, every sport, had its own section in the app, And you could go, my kids row, they row crew, which is a pretty esoteric, unknown sport, but we love watching rowing. You could go right to the rowing icon. Every event that there ever was covered, and it was amazing. You could go, and the ad loads were lower than what were on broadcast, more targeted, but lower. You can't skip the ads, so NBC definitely gets their money out of it. But it was a tremendous experience, and I think it bore out in the numbers for them. Streaming was huge for NBC on the Olympics. So live is absolutely alive and well. It's declining as the industry in total goes. Linear and live is, but on OTT, it is skyrocketing because, again, we're normalizing. We're moving away from just being Netflix to being all of TV, which means that, obviously, people need to watch live. Can't wait till the election's over, though, man. Yeah. Okay, so, another big trend, important trend, hard to know how this is all going to shake out, but consumers today typically have 3 or 4 services to choose from for pay TV. Everyone has Dish, Network, or DirecTV, pretty much. And then you probably have a cable operator available, and you may or may not have a telco offering pay TV to you. So you might have 3 or 4 services historically. So here in the next just couple years, 2-3 years, that's all going to change, and you're going to have like a dozen pay TV packages to choose from, and they're all going to be trying to differentiate from each other. Some are going to be super ultra deluxe with everything and really amazing user interfaces. Other ones are going to be just really skinny down, cost effective, lean, mean, targeted types of packages. But there's going to be a lot of diversity, a lot of innovation in user interface, a lot of innovation in advertising. Competition is going way up in this area. So it'll be exciting, and it'll offer consumers a lot of choice. But yeah, having a dozen pay TV packages to choose from is going to be a really big change for folks. Today on Roku we have Sling, which is doing phenomenally well. That's a spin out or a subsidiary of Dish Network, who are smartly going after the internet as an alternative method of distribution. It's been quite publicly discussed that DirecTV, AT&T is also coming out with a package eventually here pretty soon. Hulu, rumors about Hulu have been discussed, coming out with a package here, hopefully first half of next year. We also have Sony PlayStation Vue, which started out on the PlayStation, but is now also available on Roku. I think it's on Amazon Fire TV as well. But that's they just dropped the price, so they're actually getting pretty aggressive with the price. It's a really rich, full bundle and super compelling user experience that they're investing in. So that's just what we're talking about the next 6 months or so. And there's a lot more coming down the pike. The interesting thing that I'm kind of waiting for, that I'm wondering if it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, is when some operator, one of the operators, will hit the nuclear war button and go beyond their footprint. So imagine, Comcast going beyond their footprint and deciding to launch a nationwide pay TV service. I mean, DirecTV and Dish are already kind of doing it, but they're satellite. But in terms of, the operators who have always historically been regionally oriented and not really competing with other cable operators, right? Because their regions are mutually exclusive, so they kind of tend to operate as friends. But, for all these years, 40, 50 years of this sort of historical friendship, at some point somebody's going to step over the line and launch a national service. And then the other one will have to do it back. And then pretty soon, all these operators and telcos are going to start launching national services, competing against each other. And it'll be a very positive thing for consumers. I think maybe a little confusing, the amount of choice that folks are going to get, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, and it's I don't think very many people realize that a dozen I think is conservative. It could be multiple dozens and then followed by a shakeout. But there's going to be a lot of diversity of bundles. A lot of diversity of user experiences, a lot of innovation, And we haven't even started yet. We're just getting started. So if you think streaming's getting old hat, we are only scratching the surface of the transition that's going to happen. The changes are going to be enormous. Many Roku users don't have pay TV, so this is 45%. If you're good at math, you can see that. 45% don't have pay TV. Flip side, of course, is that the majority of Roku users actually do have pay TV. And that number's been pretty stable. When I first got here, wasn't far off of that number, but I thought that the cord cutter number would just keep going and going and going until it was 50%, 60%, 70%, like that. But it's actually been pretty stable for a few years. But this 45% of users are very important to advertisers, and advertisers still have to find a way to get to them. And pay TV folks also want to get them back into the fold. So this trend that I talked about earlier of a dozen new pay TV packages coming, when we survey, which we do, survey the heck out of these people to ask them, what would bring you back in, they're actually open. If the service is $19.99, if the service has a better user experience, if the service has unique content that they can't get otherwise, these kinds of things, they'll come back into the pay TV fold. So they're not lost forever, but it's a very interesting cohort because it's a large percentage of Roku users, and if you look at Roku users as a percentage of all cord cutters, we have a lot of the cord cutters on Roku. I mean, basically, if you're a cord cutter, you probably have a Roku. So we are kind of this microcosm understudied by the entire industry because, in some ways, people, synonymize us with cord cutters. Again, the majority of our users have pay TV operators, but if you want to know about cord cutters, you come study Roku to learn about them. And so we put a lot of effort and a lot of time with advertisers, pay TV operators, programmers to try to help continue access to this important subset. A lot of these people are younger, right? They're millennials that everybody wants to get after, especially the cord never crowd is basically the millennial crowd. And so that's a super crucial demographic that we have to keep in the fold. So don't count TV out yet, and then the reason I put this slide up is there's a lot of talk about mobile. I'm not saying you should ignore mobile. Obviously, mobile, very important, very high growth, transforming everything about society just about. But I see executives often making mistakes because they get a little bit caught up in all of that and sort of take their eye off the ball, once in a while, for digital media type executives. Because the fact is that TV is still, in terms of video engagement, TV is still 80 times the size of mobile. 80 times the size of mobile. So, it's not even close, really. And I'm not talking about streaming, I'm talking about all TV, so broadcast, antenna, what have you. But engagement on the television is still enormous. And even for millennials still like TV. They don't necessarily want to watch on their mobile phone. Historically, TVs have not been internet connected. Smartphones have obviously always been internet connected. PCs have been connected for a long time. So we're coming from this place where the hardware, the only internet connected hardware was things like tablets and mobile and PC. And so that's why video had gotten off to such a big start there. The TVs just weren't connected. But that's changing now because of Roku and because of other devices and the fact that TVs are becoming smart TVs. It's like this revenge of the TV. The TV is roaring back into the streaming ecosystem and starting to get its sort of fair share of recognition. And app developers, it used to be they would start with iOS, then they would do Android, then they'd maybe do the game consoles, maybe hit Samsung TV, and then start doing the players like Apple TV and Roku and way down the list. Now that's completely flipped, where a lot of app developers are actually doing Roku first because we're the biggest in the country, and then maybe Apple TV, Amazon, and then kind of going backwards and getting to the mobile apps later. Obviously, it's better to do them all at once, but in terms of engagement, TV is 80 times mobile. And so it makes sense to start and focus on the TV. These are some Hulu-specific numbers that I snarfed off their website. And it shows, so OTT means TV. It's industry lingo, obviously, for TV. And so you can see what's happening here from 2014 to 2015, a few quarters of analysis. Mobile kind of holding its own. PC in a free fall, absolute free fall in terms of streaming time spent. And TV growing like crazy, where it's 2/3 of their viewing. And this is what's happening to video generally. You know, YouTube is an exception. YouTube will tend to be more mobile. And you know, back on this slide, of the video viewing on mobile, that's almost all YouTube, by the way. And it's important to keep in mind that YouTube, people grow out of YouTube. I mean, not everyone. It's sort of like computer games. You know, that people are heavy up as teens and early 20s on YouTube and computer games, and then they get busier and need to earn money and things like that, and just, you know, they start gravitating back to the big screen. So they don't stay on YouTube. You know, it's not like they don't necessarily maintain the same level of YouTube viewing all the way into their 20s and 30s. So especially for long-form services, they're going to look like this. The vast majority of viewing is going to be to the television. And this is today when still not all TVs are hooked up to the internet. You know, think about 3 or 4 years from now when we get to the point where virtually everyone's TV is hooked up to the internet. You know, PC will be virtually gone from this list. Mobile will probably hold its own, but TV will continue to grow. Talking about the smart TV market, also very important. We're most famous for the players, but smart TV market is super important. And you know, this gets back to the point I was making about how TVs have not been traditionally connected. That's because if you look back in 2010, most TVs that were sold were still not internet connectable TVs. And so that's completely flip-flopping by 2019, where the vast majority of TVs will be internet connectable over time. The total amount of TVs is relatively flat, but it's flipping to the point where virtually all TVs will be eventually smart. Interestingly, it's important to note that in this transition, the Chinese manufacturers are coming on really strong with their market share. The Japanese manufacturers, the Korean manufacturer market shares are shrinking, whereas the Chinese manufacturing shares are growing. And one of the reasons, I believe, is because the Chinese manufacturers are licensing their OSs. They're licensing typically either from Google or from Roku. And so these are really the best smart TV experiences, whereas some of the Japanese and Korean manufacturers are still focused on their own software ecosystems, you know, because they want to, I guess, keep all the monetization streams to themselves or whatever. But they just don't have the same level of focus or resources or skill that a Roku or a Google have, and so their experiences are not as good, and they're losing share. Not to mention the fact that you can get a 65-inch TV for like $550 or something like that. The Chinese TVs are such great deals. So this is a survey of folks just asking them what's their preferred viewing, and the ordering of the bar charts is a little unfortunate, but does this thing have a laser? Nope. So internet-connected TV device, nearly, what was it, 44% of people would prefer that. The third one over, 22% of folks would prefer a game console. So that's the vast majority right there. What is that, like 2/3 of folks basically want it on TV, which kind of matches that Hulu chart that I showed. And then the rest of the folks are talking about desktop or mobile. And Netflix is long form, of course, so very few people, single-digit percentage of people want to actually watch Netflix on mobile. Long form is not a mobile medium. All right, here's an eye chart. Try to net it out for you. Basically, what I was trying to do is help folks understand which platforms are growing at which rate. because a lot of media companies and tech companies want to know where to focus their efforts. So streaming players are the fastest growing category for video viewing platforms, 254% year-over-year growth. So these are products like Roku, streaming players, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google Chromecast. That is the fastest growing category. Also growing very, very fast is a similar category, which is pay TV provided set-top boxes that have app platforms. So these are not the old school set-top box that I showed in one of my early slides, but to the degree that a pay TV operator like Comcast, for example, distributing their X1 platform, or Time Warner Cable. Now Charter also distributes quite a few Rokus directly, and you can get Time Warner Cable or Charter Spectrum service on your Roku without a traditional set-top box now. So those two categories are the fastest growing video viewership platforms in the market. And then holding their own, kind of in the middle, are smart TVs. They're not gaining a whole lot of video market share. They're not losing a whole lot of video market share. Everything's growing, by the way. All of these platforms are growing in terms of total amount of viewing. Nothing's shrinking because internet video is just such a hugely growing phenomenon. Generally, all boats are rising. But in terms of who's gaining share is what I'm talking about right now. So the cables, telco boxes are gaining share. The streaming players are gaining share. The smart TVs are flat in share. Also flat in share are mobile is basically flat in share. And then shrinking are game consoles and PCs, shrinking pretty dramatically in market share. How are we doing on time?
We've got about 10 minutes left in the hour, so.
Okay, good. So we have, going into Roku a little bit more detail, we have three paths to customers. We have our players. We have our Roku TVs that I've talked about, so we've been licensing our software into OEM TV markets. And then we have our Roku-powered solutions where we partner with operators to get rid of their old school set-top boxes and replace them with better ones. And those three methods to market have yielded 11 million active users for us about now. And many of those have more than one Roku. They might have 2 or 3 or 4 Rokus in their household, so we've sold a lot more than 11 million Rokus. And we're in about 10 countries, US, Canada, Mexico, UK, Ireland, Germany, France, Italy, Austria, Australia. Forgetting some, I'm sure, but did I say Mexico? Mexico's going really well for us. And we streamed about 4 billion hours through the first half of this year. Last year we streamed about 5.5 billion hours. So to give you a sense for our growth rate, well, it says right there, 72% year over year growth rate. So fast growing business for us for sure. It's a lot of hours. In terms of looking at our competition, how are we doing? We're doing great. We are by far the most engaged. Like I said, if you are a streamer, you probably have a Roku. And I can't really quite explain all the reasons other than our products are super easy to use and we have tons of content and low prices and great value and heavy distribution and just executing well in a lot of different ways. But this is an NPD report that shows us at about 73 million hours a month or a week, excuse me. That's about more than double Google Chromecast or Amazon Fire TV. It's actually more than triple Apple TV's engagement rate, triple Vizio's engagement rate. So yeah, people stream a lot on Roku. Here's another way to look at it. In terms of streaming hours market share for OTT devices in the US, it's a ComScore chart. We're about half of it, about half of all traffic to streaming players. We're about the same as Apple, Amazon, and Google combined in the US. So we're very big in the US. People can't quite figure this out about us. Like, why? How? It's because we're awesome. So we have a really broad streaming lineup. Our Roku Ultra is our flagship product line, 4K, tons of features, and it's $130, HDR, all kinds of cool, innovative features like a headphone jack where you can plug in a pair of headphones into the remote. It mutes the system, and then you can just listen that way. Remote locator, so if the remote gets lost in the couch cushions or whatever, you push a button on the player and the remote starts beeping so you can find it. All kinds of great features. All the way down to our base model, the Roku Express, we just launched $29.99. What a great value. And they actually have basically the same user interface, the same feature set, the same content provider, so there's not a huge difference in what's available. The Roku Express is actually a super full-featured product and tiny to boot. We have about 6 partners that we work with in integrating the Roku OS, TCL, Hisense, Sharp, Hitachi, Insignia, that's Best Buy's brand, one of the best-selling TVs in the US. Haier is another one. We're adding new ones all the time. It's a very exciting business for us, and like I said, we originally started out kind of focused on Chinese brands, but we're starting to get some traction with some of the Japanese and Korean brands as well. We're excited about that. We had 0% market share for smart TVs in 2014 because we hadn't started yet. In our first year of business, we had 8% as of the middle of last year, 8% market share of smart TVs. So in the middle of this year, we're at about 12% market share and growing. So it's been a phenomenal ride for us, and our goal, of course, is to be the leading operating system of television. If you think of what Android is for the phone, that's our goal, is to be that for the television, and we're making some great progress here in terms of market share, partnering with TV makers. And then deep diving a little bit in our Roku-powered business. So we've got some big partners. It's more of an international thing. Like I said, we are partnered with Charter here and CenturyLink and others here in the U.S. doing a nice business. But international operators are really coming to Roku in droves, and we're able to partner with them. Like Sky, for example, in the UK, they basically made us leaders in the UK by subsidizing our hardware, putting huge marketing budgets and great content offerings behind it, and really supercharging our entry into the UK. Same thing with Telstra in Australia, by far leaders in Australia because of Telstra. It's called actually Telstra TV there, powered by Roku. So our brand is visible, but it's secondary brand to Telstra. So it's almost kind of like a white label approach. But they're heavily bundling with ISP subscriptions, heavily promoting, and it's super successful for them. They don't even have their own pay TV service that they offer. They bundle with Foxtel, which is kind of the DirecTV of Australia, and that's how you get a pay TV service. But they're really fueling our success, super successful program in Australia. And so that's what we use the Roku-powered program to do, is rather than, in the US, we really got catapulted into the marketplace with Netflix, because there's a lot of pent-up demand to get Netflix launched into the marketplace and to get Netflix on your TV. And we were the first Netflix player, so that was just a huge boost, and there was no competition. Internationally, it's not so much the case, right? Netflix isn't as popular as it is here in the US internationally, and we do have a lot of competition now internationally. So this is how we do it. We partner with operators who launch us into these regions, and when we get the right operator in a country, we become the leaders, despite maybe even entering later than our competition. And it's really working well. Okay, so now I'm going to just talk about the models a little bit. TVOD is obvious, movie rentals, transactional. We'll get a rev share on those when those happen. SVOD, TVOD is transactional VOD, sorry for the lingo. SVOD, subscription VOD. And this is what's really growing and coming on strong with a lot of new entrants like DirecTV Now coming soon, HBO Now launched earlier this year, music services like Spotify. And then ad-supported, as I mentioned, is the fastest growing. So this is stuff like Crackle or YouTube, or a lot of YouTubers actually coming direct on the platform, services like CBS News or Red Bull. And what we do there is when a service launches, we'll typically take 30% of their ad inventory in exchange for basically promoting that service. And then we sell those ads. So we have a pretty big and growing video ad sales business. On the subscription side, I didn't mention, the way we participate there is if we win a subscriber, we'll get a revenue share, ongoing revenue share. We don't get a revenue share for every user of a subscriber service, say Netflix, for example, on the system. But if we win, like a Netflix or a Hulu or CBS All Access or somebody like that, a subscriber, then we get a rev share. TV Everywhere, historically, we just let them on the platform and didn't really have a business model. But in our renewals, we are typically getting ad inventory shares there as well. So this is an interesting chart. It just shows those 4 business models, basically, and how they're growing in the market generally. So you can see the transactional stuff, rentals are actually going down. So it gets to that earlier point about movies versus TV shows. SVOD is becoming so compelling, scripted television is so compelling that it's skyrocketing the SVOD segments, the subscription segment, and the ad-supported segment, but somewhat to the detriment of the transactional segment. Folks are also frustrated by the new windowing schemes where new releases come out only EST at first, where you have to pay like $15 or $11 or whatever for the movie, and then it takes a couple weeks, and then it comes into the rental window. So it's causing a lot of folks just to give up on the transactional side of things altogether, which is disappointing because we'd like to see the transactional world stay strong. So big year this year, digital ad spend as a total, not just digital video ad spend, but all digital ad spend will catch up with the traditional TV ad market. So those 2 markets roughly the same size now. Kind of surprising it took this long, really, but they're both around $70 billion markets at this point. And so we're investing in it really heavily. We have our audience development ad packages, which is to help our publishers promote and build audience. So we actually sell like display ad units and whatnot to content publishers on the Roku platform. We have video ad sales that I already mentioned. And then we also have data that we provide to third-party apps to help them sell advertising in a new, more progressive kind of a way. And we just announced this new feature called Roku Direct Publisher. And this gives Roku publishers the ability to be on the platform without building an app. So it's a little bit like YouTube, basically publishing video. We do have the publisher host the video, so it's more like an MRSS feed, use tech lingo. But basically, you put your video on a server, you register that URL through a form on our website, and voila, you have a Roku channel. So it's very easy to create a Roku channel now. And what's nice about this is if we add a new feature, like a new feature to our ad SDK or some like fast video playback startup feature, things like this, you don't have to go rewrite your app to take advantage of the new feature. It just comes automatic. And so all of this stuff is really transforming with our ability to target, our ability to deliver interactivity, the measurement that we can provide. This is really where the future of advertising is going. We partner with folks like Acxiom and Experian. We can match pretty much any kind of data. When you use loyalty cards, they know what you buy, and that gives us a lot of ability to target advertising. It's not paired with personal information at all, so nobody actually knows who you are, but it gives us the ability to target advertising in a really compelling way. And that's it, basically. I don't need to repeat myself on all this, but that's our vision of the future and kind of overview of specifics of what we're doing. We have time for questions. Not too much.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much to Steve Shannon. He'll stick around for a few minutes and ask questions afterwards.